there's a lot of people that do it because it's a job, but I just fell in love with it. I have said that SEO is like juggling Rubik's cubes, trying to solve them in midair. And his first day, he wanted to see what was going on the website. So he goes to the home page and he's scanning the source code. And halfway down the source code, there's a comment. And the comment said, invisible text added for search engines. The entire SEO industry was the speakers. And all 8 of us sat at one round table in the bar. If there was some sort of meteor strike that took out that building, we'd have wiped out the entire industry.
Hello, and welcome to SEO Pioneers. Today, I'm talking to the father of SEO, Mr. Bruce Clay, who I'm sure needs very little introduction. Bruce founded bruceclay.com in 1996 and has been a key and influential figure in the industry ever since. So today I'm going to kick off by asking Bruce, what is your background in the early 1990s, just before you came into the industry, and what led you into SEO, and how did you arrive at building and ranking websites?
Okay, well, I have a bachelor's degree in math and computer science, so I was originally a programmer. But back in the 90s, it was mainframes. And I moved around a little bit. I was in mainframes, then I went to computer networks, then I went to PCs. I was the general manager of the networking division of ACER, which at the time was the largest Novell reseller in the world. And it was a very popular thing, but for various business reasons, I thought I would try it myself. January of 96, that's back when Al Gore was inventing the internet. And I thought the internet was going to catch on, so I got into it. I have a MBA, I have, technical programming skills. I had spent time prior to that with a company that did optimization products for mainframes.
Okay, how did that work?
Well, what they had was this is somewhat technical, but they had software that ran on a mainframe that you could point at an application and it would interrupt the application every so many milliseconds and say, what is running? What is running? What is running? What instruction are you on? And then what it would do is produce a performance report that says, you're spending 80% of your time on these 20 instructions. Optimize them. So you can make applications far more, I would say, fast, make it faster. But anyhow, I got into the internet because it looked like it was going to be a hot thing. And being a programmer, I started trying to figure out where the money was going to be made, and it was all going to be in search. I mean, somehow, at least that's what I came up with. So I looked at search engines, and of course, there's software with an algorithm. My bachelor's is in math.
You were perfectly positioned. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I was like right at the right spot at the right time.
Right place, right time.
And so I started analyzing and determining if I could optimize web pages to be better ranked, because that was the optimization target on the search engines, to be better ranked. And back then, that was 3 years before Google. I know a lot of people don't know there was a time before Google. But that's back when it was Excite, Alta Vista, InfoSeek. It was actually AOL was getting in there, but they were using other people's software. I created this thing called a search engine relationship chart.
Yeah.
And it went just ballistic. Everybody had it. I had, without really trying to count it, I had come up with approximately 300,000 downloads in the first month to 6 weeks. That chart went everywhere. It was the best marketing ploy in my life because I had my company name on every cubicle wall of everybody doing design or SEO. It was great.
How do you think people were finding that in those early days? Do you think, was it just a word of mouth thing?
Well, I mean, people were using the internet and they were using search. And as people created websites, the search engines, of course, were really hungry. I mean, they wanted to devour the internet. And then all of a sudden, people wanted to be at the top of the results. And people would just search for it. I was in a couple of newsletter groups and things like that, and people would inquire, and they would either come to my site or they would go to one of the top sites that pointed to my site, or they would sign up for a newsletter that pointed to my site. And lo and behold, I was in business. This was a company I started on my dining room table, literally. I consider myself to have been early into the industry, really before it was an industry. And Danny Sullivan gave me credit for coining, if not that, then popularizing the phrase search engine optimization. I actually fell in love with it. And that's the tiebreaker here. There's a lot of people that do it because it's a job, but I just fell in love with it. I wrote my website, I gave away data, I gave away information, I told people how to do it. My site shot to the top, I did really, really well, kept expanding. And it's been a great career for me.
So if you go right back to the very beginning, you started on your dining room table, as I would imagine quite a lot of people in this industry did. As you sort of built your first site and you started to expand, how did you start to get your first clients? How did you make your inroads into the industry?
Well, I actually made inroads. As I said, there were a number of popular search engines. And one was InfoSeek. And that was my favorite.
Right.
It was basically the Google of its era. And I loved it.
What was so great about it that you loved?
Because you could change a web page, manually submit it, and it would be in the rankings in 1 minute.
Instantly, yeah.
So I was able to debug what I needed to do in a day.
Instant feedback.
Then I wrote some applications that made it easy. Back then they were called keyword density analyzers. But I wrote a page analyzer that said, this word is used in the title, in the description, in the keyword, in the headings, in the alt tags, how it's distributed through the body. And it sliced and diced this web page, and you could see where all the holes were. And really, on day one, all you had to do is plug the hole and you ranked. But it was InfoSeek because I could change it, get ranked, and it was pretty fast. Now, remember, I was on my dining room table. It wasn't like I had a high overhead. When I started, I was charging $800 a month. I have clients now paying $45,000 a month. I mean, obviously there's been inflation, but it has grown. It has grown a lot. And the technology has changed, and obviously Google has changed everything, and that's been a roller coaster.
Can you remember who your first client was?
I think my first client was a witch.
Okay.
This was a person that had a Wicca site. And wanted to sell their products, and I optimized it, and they sold a lot of products. Eventually just sold the company. But I think every SEO should have a witch as a client, personally.
So in those early days, you said that you loved InfoSeek. There's something that I've heard from other people as well, the instant feedback. How did you find Alta Vista as a searching engine? Because I know at the time that was one of the dominant players, wasn't it?
Alta Vista, Excite, InfoSeek were the big ones.
Yeah.
I remember back when Alta Vista actually did an announcement that they finally had spidered 50,000 websites. Now, by our standards today, that's like, yeah, an hour.
Yeah.
But there weren't that many websites. And this was pre-Google. And one of the other things, if anybody wants to, you can pull up the search engine chart. What we found was that very few of the search engines did their own spidering. They didn't crawl. What they did was this search engine, A, entered into a partnership with Alta Vista and used the Alta Vista index, right? Like Google provided the index for a great many of the sites in the early days, AOL as an example. So there was this, I get pay-per-click from this engine, but I get organic results from that engine, and I merge them. And it was very much of a network, if you will. All the sites were connected to each other. And so there weren't a whole lot of just one search engine controls its own destiny back in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, there's a massive amount of diversity with, there's quite a huge number of search engines, and there's quite a lot of niche ones. And I mean, at that time, did you ever envisage that search would become dominated by one monopoly? Or did you think it would always be that diversity?
I thought in the beginning, it would be multiple search engines forever. I had thought that much like a lot of the industries that I had been in, even in programming, which is there's one language, 2 languages, 4 languages, 8 languages, and languages just seem to be creeping in there. I had envisioned that search engines would do the same thing, and it would probably not be 22, which is what it started as. Yeah. Because they were all buying from each other. I had figured it would be about 6 to 8, probably. Nobody could, well, I'm sure some people did, but nobody really was saying Google is going to be the survivor. And in the early days, Microsoft, with all of its money and its own browser, it looked like that was going to really be a major play forever. Yeah. Right? That didn't happen. And who knew AOL was going to die? Back in '96, there were these things called modems. Yeah. And you connected through AOL. And so you got to remember, in the beginning, if you were to say to me, what search engine is going to survive, it was going to be all sorts of search engines surviving. Google came in and became dominant quickly. Do you think that the industry has actually lost out for that dominance? I mean, do you think it would have, say Google had never happened and we'd gone down this road of the diversity and this shared monopoly, do you think that would have been a benefit or a negative? Well, it would have made things more competitive. So when Google started, there was no pay-per-click. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And after a while, when Google was so dominant, they could charge and get more money on their pay-per-click. I think that one of the things that if you had 8 search engines competing and they were all reasonably similar market share, you would have a more competitive pay-per-click space.
What do you think that would actually do though for, for people? I mean, obviously for SEOs and in the industry, splitting that market share, because obviously at the moment, everybody is very much reliant on getting visibility. We can't get around the fact that Google is where we need to be. And right. Can you imagine if there were 8, 10, that market share was split? I mean, do you think perhaps it would be niched across different industries, or would it just be a case of you had to be on all of them, so we were 8, 10 times in the work? It's just interesting to consider that, how that would have played out.
Yeah, that would be I don't know that you'd have a legal search engine and a marketing search engine for e-commerce, and then a different search engine for information and education, and then I don't know if it would segregate that way. I did imagine there would be more mobility though. One of the things that I think we know, and this could be wrong, but in the beginning, there was Netscape. Mm-hmm. Remember that? That's the browser everybody used, 70% market share. Mm. Then there was IE. Mm. Then there was Firefox.
Yeah, good old Firefox.
And then there was Chrome, right? People like the latest bell and whistle, but they're fickle and they move. Mm-hmm. So I had imagined that the search engine marketplace people would move. Yeah. That if there was a Google, there'd be a different one in 2 years. And they'd leapfrog, and the features would change, and all sorts of things would happen to cause a search engine to outperform the others. And somehow Google was able to get to the top and win mind share and hold on.
You see, it's interesting that, like you say, I think probably nobody envisaged that Google would become so dominant for so long. Things churn over quite quickly. And I think a lot of people probably anticipated Google will have its day for a few years, and then we would have passed on to another one. What do you think it is that has caused Google to hold on and just grow and dominate as they have for so long?
Well, Google does satisfy the user. Yeah. I think that we've run into which results are better. Mm-hmm. Bing even had a TV commercials about it, right? The blind test, which one do you prefer? And I think that right now, if you're getting satisfactory results, there's no significant pressure to change to a different engine. Mm. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bing has been trying nibbling at the edge for a long time, and they just can't seem to quite make it. But so when you first came across Google, and I know Google, it was quite a difference from, say, for example, Alta Vista, because they had their link first algorithm. What were your impressions of moving over to that link first? Did you think that would be a good thing, or did you sort of see the potential of it being spammed to death?
Well, it took literally 2 weeks for it to be spammed to death. Literally. Yeah. That's one of the cool things about being there when it launched. Yeah. The big claim to fame, it was immediately interpreted as whoever dies with the most links wins. There was no downside to getting a link. There was no quality review. There was no spam reviews that really had anything to do with it. It's just get a link, you win. And when you have that kind of a open market, I think you're going to have people just spamming you to death. Mm-hmm. And it worked. And that became, created a feeding frenzy, if you will, for people to just go out and get links. So
Do you think the fact that in the early days Google invested so much time into participating in the SEO industry, and the balance was very much SEOs were in the power in the early days, and Google turned to them quite heavily, didn't they, to get a lot of feedback? Do you think that's what really helped them develop their product so much?
No. That's the Google answer. What was done early on, I think it was like 99 was when Google launched. Right around that time, Danny Sullivan started search engine strategies, SES. And obviously the search engines went to that. And as long as there was a forum where a bunch of people who are not your employees are giving you feedback on your product, but they're all technical. Yeah, Google obviously went and needed and wanted that environment.
Were none of the others doing this? For example, InfoSeek and Alta Vista, were they, and XI, were they not putting so much investment into getting the same feedback? Do you think that's where they went wrong then?
Right. I do not recall a great many people from the other engines even attending any of the conferences. And I was going to Danny's first conference. I remember it well. There were, the entire SEO industry was the speakers. And all 8 of us sat at one round table in the bar. If there was some sort of meteor strike that took out that building, we'd have wiped out the entire industry.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Yeah. Did you spoke at the first SES, didn't you?
It was a very different kind of a thing.
Can you remember what you spoke?
It wasn't actually a presentation. There were only 200 people.
Oh, okay.
And the advanced sessions, there was one session, one track that was training. And there was an advanced track that was basically a round table in a room.
Yeah.
There were like 2 or 3 round tables, and you sat at your round table with one of those signs in the middle that said what your track name was. And people would wander over if they had a question. So
Bruce, just to go back a little bit again, you're obviously attributed for being one of the first, for being the first person to coin the phrase search engine optimization. When did you first start using that, and where did that come from?
Well, as I mentioned, I had prior lifetime experience doing optimization of things. Worked for companies that had products that did it. So optimization to me made sense. And it was about search engines, and I was optimizing the pages to get them to perform better. So to me, it made sense. But I made a mistake in that I didn't go out and trademark it. I didn't buy all the right domains. Who knew anything like that would ever catch on? At around the same time, I started talking about it in newsletters, but I never made a big deal about it. I just I do search engine optimization, and it didn't even occur to me that it would ever be an industry, right? It would be, oh, that's just the name Bruce made up.
So you weren't actually actively pushing it or anything. It just what you referred to.
That's how I referred to it. And clearly I was a big fan of the industry. I mean, I was speaking at conferences, I was posting every day. I was one of the first people out there that really popularized the industry. And then somehow the name became connected with what I was doing. And so I popularized the name. If you go to Wikipedia, there's on the search engine optimization page, there's only 3 people named, right? Danny Sullivan, Matt Cutts, Bruce Clay. Those are the only individuals that are named on the page. And I was clearly involved in trying to be supportive of this industry. I thought this was going to be a great thing. I had succeeded in prior lifetimes. It'd be great for me to be able to help and succeed here. And apparently a lot of what I did at the beginning really did help. It popularized the term. It got a lot of people interested in it as a career. Certainly, I mean, it's now taught at universities, so, and it's worldwide. So it turned out to be a good career.
So was this actually a second career for you? You said you'd already been successful. Was this, yeah, a second venture?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had, well, I would consider being a senior VP and general manager of the networking division of ACER to be a pretty successful step. But I had never been a consultant. And, you know, I hate to say it, but I had this vision of me on a beach with a notebook computer and a Corona beer, just working all day long. That was my vision of how it would work. And it hasn't quite worked that way, but that was my vision at the time, right? Who knew?
Bruce, I think actually there is a huge percentage of us started out thinking, yes, we can work on with our laptops on a beach, and then we realized just how much hard work it is, and it really doesn't work like that, does it?
No, you know, I'm good at a lot of things. I'm not good at everything, but I'm good at a lot of things. And I was able to solve problems. I was able to see problems. I was able to do things. People hired me. And the more people that hired me, the busier I got. And I never really made it to the beach with a notebook computer. Now, maybe that wouldn't have been a good spot for a notebook computer because of the sand, but I never made it there. The closest I got is my backyard, but it's fun to have these visions of where it could go as an independent consultant, but the demand dragged it into being a company. And it's a different kind of a thing. And maybe I'm too much on a tangent here, but one of the things that over time I realized is that the demand for something like SEO really is top 3, top 5 rankings out of millions of results. And I've had some success doing impossible missions. Addicting games, we took from nowhere to #1 out of 14 billion results for the word games. Impossible results. But if you keep at it, you can do it. But when you have projects like that, you don't get to go to the beach much.
No.
And but you get to the point where think about this. How many people people that love this, get to solve puzzles for a living day in and day out, right? I am playing, this is not going to come across quite right, perhaps, to some people, but I'm basically doing a simulation where I am making a change to your website, your competition is making a change to their website, and Google is changing the algorithm all at the same time. And on a day-to-day basis, I am actually in control of whether your company goes broke. Now, maybe I'm exaggerating, but think about it. If you lost 80% of your traffic, many companies would be out of business.
Oh, yeah.
And
sure.
What I get to do for a living is the puzzle that goes with determining whether your company is going to be here tomorrow. And there's a lot of responsibility on that, and you can't walk away from it. You can't. And I felt that the responsibility really belongs to the SEO, although a lot of SEOs don't share it. I think that's where it belongs. That's why I wrote the code of ethics.
Yeah.
That's why I speak at conferences. That's why I teach master classes at conferences and my own class. That's why, because I think that the people that really care about an industry owe it to the industry to help it survive.
Mm. Do you still do hands-on work yourself?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I still spend a couple hours easy a day reading and keeping up. I get into some really cool projects. Some of the larger clients. I review every client in the company. And remember, we're small enough that I can do this. I review every project every week.
Yeah. Just coming back, because obviously to put that much investment of yourself into something, you have to be very passionate about it. You can't give that much, can you? I mean, I am obsessed with this industry. I just the sort of the intersection of data and psychology, and I'm absolutely the bit that I've got the bug. What was it for you in those early days? What was it that, what really got you?
I think it was the sense of winning.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the wrong thing, but there was virtually, and still to this day, there is virtually no site that we cannot get ranked giving client support in enough time. It may take a year. I mean, but my attitude towards ranking, it isn't what a lot of people want KPIs like revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But all SEO can do is send you bodies, right? But the preamble to being able to send a body is obviously ranking. If you can't rank, you're not going to have top of mind recall. You're not going to be seen. Your brand is not going to get to where you want it to be. So ranking was it. And I was to a point where almost every single thing I touched, I got ranked. I could figure it out. It was simple compared to today. It was a lot simpler.
Yeah.
There were 100 variables in the algorithm, not 300. And I think that one of the things, by the way, that makes it more complex today is that Google has determined that there's an interplay between the variables in the algorithm. I think that if you're transactional or informational, you have a different set of codependence. And that if you do A and you're great at it, but you don't do B, you lose. If you do B and you're great at it, but you don't do A, you lose. You have to do them both. So they're codependent. And I think that the algorithm has started forming a lot of codependence. And therefore, to really win, you have to have a concept, at least, and a methodology for being able to rank across codependence. And I haven't heard anybody talking about codependence, but yeah, that'll work. But it turns out that they're in our mind, for whatever it's worth, we think that there are codependents. And we think that for every keyword, there's a different algorithm. Because transactional versus informational is a continuum. It's not binary. And so this keyword is a little bit more informational or a little bit more transactional than one that is just a little bit different, even a synonym. If you use a synonym, people using the synonym might actually be transactional versus informational, but it's still a synonym. They mean the same. And if you use the wrong synonym, you don't rank. Right? And schema in theory, it'll help that. But I think when you go through the complexities of it today, it's very different from before.
And you know, actually, I was just going to make a comment. You were saying about the problem solving, and I was just thinking that, do you think that comes from like an engineer's mindset?
A programming background, where it's me against a computer and the computer behavior is always the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it is cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. That is one of the puzzle solving things that I like, because there's sort of a sense of accomplishment when you get a program that works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think SEO is much the same way. Now, there's certainly characteristics that if you never finish, you never get the psychic reward, right? If I can never get to number one, I'm going to, after a while, hate it. But that's why you get better. A lot of people are amateur golfers or amateur basketball players or whatever, and they may never be a pro, but that doesn't mean they don't go out golfing every weekend. Right?
Yeah.
It's the aspiring to get that one great hole that keeps you coming back and coming back and coming back. And I think in SEO, the frequency and rate of change is so high between the competitive nature and the changes at the search engine that there's always some action for you to win. And if you walked into SEO today and you had 10 years experience, if you'd have been out of it for 2 years, within 6 weeks, you're in the midst of it. Because it is the competitive nature that drives you. You're not going to, like you indicated for yourself, you're not going to give it up. Well, that's what drives SEOs. It's the fun. I have said that SEO is like juggling Rubik's cubes, trying to solve them in midair. And by the way, people can do that.
Yeah, I've seen that recently.
But Google keeps changing the colors. I say that SEO will never end until Google stops changing things and all your competition has died. So in the tool space, 90% of 95, 98% even of all the tools that are out on the market, they focus on helping you repair things that are broken on your website.
Mm-hmm.
And people think of audits as repair, and they think of these tools as repair. And certainly you should repair things. But Google has said that a majority of the numbers you get from tools don't move the needle. They don't care about them. Go ahead and fix them. They don't care. What we really focus on, other than, you have to not be your own worst enemy, it's that you need to be competitive. And there is no tool that is going to analyze my site. I sell shoes. There's no tool out there that's going to tell me how to perform better against other tool sites, shoe sites, right? It doesn't do a deep dive in my industry. It doesn't analyze my industry at all. It can't even tell me that of the top 10 for my major keyword, that the average page is 838 words. They can't tell me that I don't have enough content or I have too much content for my industry. Very few activity, even statistics are at that level. And so if you want to be competitive, it's well beyond just tools, right? And I'm fond of saying there's a difference between data and wisdom. Mm-hmm. Anybody can get data.
Yeah.
Anybody can read it and it says, fix this CSS file. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it. But that isn't, how do you be in the top 3 out of 10 million results? There's layers to SEO, and I think a lot of people don't understand it. And I think that's where the market is. Anyhow, over time, I went from my dining room table to a horribly complex process of analyzing and determining what is the real problem, not just a smoking gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to the real question that put me on this tangent, yes, I keep myself involved in SEO, and because I can't even imagine. You're either going to go cold turkey and walk away from it, or you're always going to be in it, because there is no halfway to a real SEO.
Just going back a little bit, I've got to ask you this. I know that you were the founder of, you're very focused on ethics and you do a lot of work on that. But I just wanted to ask, before we talk about that, I wanted to ask you, have you ever ventured into cloaking or any of the black hat, spamming techniques in the early days? Did you dabble with that?
No. So in the very early days, and I'm talking about in the first 4 years of the 25 years I've been around, I wrote tools. So I wrote a tool. This is sort of a weird thing, but I wrote a tool because people were having difficulty getting their pages indexed. So what I would do is I wrote a tool, went out and I found all the pages that link to you. We put it up on a website, and then we submit that website to Google so that Google could find the pages that link to you. And I didn't want that to rank, so I made it no index follow. And it was passing PageRank all around the place. And everybody I did that for suddenly ranked, and it looked like I was building some sort of link farm. So yeah, at that point, what was a good intention, basically it was an XML file, except for other sites that linked to you, if you will. Mm-hmm. But there were no XML files at the time, so it didn't really help. So that went wrong. Although the concept was good, it went wrong. The second thing I tried was I wanted to find out if you could write a piece of software that for a keyword took the top 50 websites in a search result, extract out one sentence from each of them that contained the keyword, and string them together and have that page rank.
Oh, that's kind of a bit like, it's like an article spinner combined with, I'm trying to think, yeah. And did it work, Bruce?
No, it didn't work. And in fact, I got in trouble a couple of times because when I did that, the sentence that extracted that contained the keyword also contained a person's name.
Yeah.
And they found their name, and then it was evil. And the part that was so bad about it is I had actual code in there to avoid it. But when I wrote my program, I had a not instead of a do. So I had flipped over the logic. So I started generating pages with all sorts of names in it. And that was wrong. That was not fun. So I abandoned that. Now it turns out that is almost exactly what these artificial intelligence article generators do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They go out, they scrape all the sites that are theoretically experts, they pull it in, except they rewrite it dynamically. But it's almost exactly the same thing that I was doing 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just, so, yeah, the answer to your question is you're never ever going to learn how things work if you don't test it. And I had some concepts. I wanted to see if it would work. They didn't work. I stopped them. But how do you know what doesn't work? If you look at a lot of SEOs right now, I think many of them are going to tell you they experiment. And some I know on LinkedIn, some of them I've actually had conversations with, and we're connected, and I really like them. They're really smart people, but they live to experiment. They're going to say, hey, this is best practice. This is what Google tells you to do. So I'm going to do the opposite and see what happens. And when you do that, you realize all sorts of really weird things happen. For instance, we know that white text on a white background doesn't work. Or do we?
Mm. Well, yeah, maybe we know, maybe we think it is because so many people have said it doesn't work. But yeah, it's like trying to find the source of a citation. And everybody's repeating the same quote, but where did it actually come from? And, was it ever actually said? Yeah.
And, we know how Google has gone to a headless browser. They're creating a document object model. They're analyzing that because it will have executed the CSS and JavaScript. Great. In other words, they're able to spider what would really be a web page. Sometimes, though, when you do that, you break things. Things that used to be caught in the spam checker is no longer caught, or vice versa. And errors creep in. And so there's a great many people out there doing really smart testing and discovering that it isn't exactly the way Google says it works.
Yeah, I think it's the big secret, isn't it? We all know this, but yeah, let's not shout about it too loud.
It's like your audience. Tell your audience. Everybody raise your hand if you think Google's in the business of making money.
Oh gosh, yeah. How is it not, right?
Okay, so they're going to do things in Google's best interest because they're a public company, they have shareholders, they have to generate things that are smart. Do you think all the emphasis that they have for spam checking is important to them? Or do they want to sell ads? Right? I
think essentially Google, they're motivated to have a really great product. And like you said earlier on, Google has dominated because they have such a great product and because they've invested so heavily in that, and they invest in the user experience. And that's ultimately what they want, because that's what they're selling. They're selling the best user experience in search. So they're able to use that to make a lot of money and stay. But I think they do a great job at developing a great product to keep ahead of their game. So, but yeah, they do still obviously make good money.
You're exactly right. I think the things that are going to happen in the future, I think we're going to see video go ballistic. Absolutely ballistic. We're not going to be able to get out of that. And I think that if in 3 years everybody doesn't perform well for voice search, you're last. Those two areas are going to change everything. And
so
you gotta do it.
So just coming back, Bruce, what actually led you to develop the SEO? I'm trying to remember, what year was it? Was it in 98 or was it 2000 you developed the SEO code of ethics?
I think it was 98.
Yeah. And so what led you to that?
Well, there were a lot of spammers.
Yeah.
And my website, okay, so part of it is just me complaining, but my website was stolen 3 or 4 times a week in its entirety.
Scraped and copied.
Scraped and
Yeah.
appearing around the world, all sorts of places. And I actually went out and registered my entire website and got a copyright on it. But here's the cool part. You can get a copyright, but it's not like a book. You get it on a software copyright because it's on the web, which means you can change it and the copyright changes with it because it's software. Anyhow, so I was being stolen and people were claiming all sorts of things. By the way, 1 out of 3 sites that stole my website left my phone number in it. I never quite figured that part out. So yeah, it was Wild West. It was truly Wild West. Mm-hmm. And I think it continued and continued. So I published it. Within a year, it was actually in 18 languages around the world. Because when I published it, I actually said, feel free to steal this. Just link to the original so that people know what's going on. You can no follow it, doesn't matter, I don't care. But, and you can even no index the page, I don't care. Just, this is the way we as an industry should behave. And so I published it and gave it away. And it did go pretty viral. It's been around for a long time. I haven't had to change it. It's pretty straightforward. It's a do no harm kind of a statement. It's the kind of thing that if you violate any of the things, then basically you're harming the client if you're an SEO. And that's a problem.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier about feeling this great responsibility for your clients, as you said. You do hold a lot of power and responsibility. If their site was to fail, then their business could fail. Is that a responsibility you felt from the beginning?
Yeah.
And clearly,
absolutely true.
Clearly something you take very seriously.
I don't know how anybody can sleep with themselves if they destroy a client. I mean, and I think we've all, as SEOs, seen it, where somebody does a redesign, but the designer does not do any 301 redirects, crash and burn. We've all seen those kinds of things, and we all know better, and we all want to get in and help, and we feel a sense of obligation to tell people that you really need to have us involved because you're going to have a near-death experience. And, a lot of people still don't listen, but I have a sense of obligation as I think of myself as somewhat of a pioneer in the industry. And I think all of the people that are pioneers should have a sense of ownership over the way the industry goes. Doesn't mean I own a $40 billion a year industry. I don't even pretend that. The concept of Father of SEO. I'm not really that worried about whether I am or somebody else is. I'm just happy that I was able to help it. Don't get me wrong. I'm too much of a marketer to give it up. If somebody says that's what I am, I'm going to leverage it. But, you don't come with the ego that belongs with that. You should have the responsibility to say, in my role, I'm going to be white hat. In my role, I'm not going to burn my clients, right? There was a point in time where people would say, I don't work for Google, I work for my client, so spam is okay. It's Google's job to find it. But if they don't find it and I help my client get traffic, that's my job. And the code of ethics was basically saying, if you intentionally violate it, it's only a matter of time until they lose their business, right? Google will eventually roll over on everybody that's a spammer. And if you're right at the edge, that line moves. And you cannot violate the code of ethics and be able to sleep at night.
Do you think that you're motivated? I mean, I know you said you're competitive. Do you think you're motivated more by that responsibility of actually helping people or making money?
Oh, it's much more about helping people, I think. Don't get me wrong. Anybody that operates a business has got to feel a responsibility to their employees to be able to keep paying them, right?
Yeah.
And I feel a sense of obligation at an educational level, which is why I do master classes and teach classes and speak at conferences and write books, because, you know, it's way too easy for people to hear the wrong thing. We've all played the game of telephone. Telephone is where I whisper in one person's ear, my cousin has big feet. And it's passed around by whispers through the audience. And when it comes out, it is, my cousin is Bigfoot. Right? Well, imagine learning SEO that way. Right? I mean, it's going to come out. Buying links and white on white is the way to do SEO. It's going to morph. And so here's a quick story. I have a friend that got a job with a major publication. And his first day, he wanted to see what was going on the website. So he goes to the home page and he's scanning the source code. And halfway down the source code, there's a comment. And the comment said, invisible text added for search engines. You learn two lessons. One, never document your spam. And two, don't do it. But somebody in the web team heard through telephone that you can hide things and your rankings go up. So they just put it on the website, right? I mean, people don't know. So you write books, you speak at conferences, you teach classes, you have a sense of obligation to the industry. There's so many people that claim to be pioneers that have never contributed. That's a shame.
I was going to actually ask you, I know you've invested very heavily in training. You've obviously built up the Bruce Clay training side of your business. Do you actually prefer the training or the SEO work? I mean, I know you're really passionate about the SEO work, but do you think, which is your preference? Or do you love them both?
I love them both. Training is harder, not because, I mean, think about this. When you're giving training and it's live training, especially, you're sitting there taking questions, right? I got to the point where I was doing sessions at conferences and I was running them, doing sessions at conferences where the whole hour was ask me anything, where the audience is full of SEOs, right? I love being able to answer the questions and help people. I mean, I love that part. The hard part is standing for 4.5 days. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't know of too many people who could stand 4 hours and not do it. And I was teaching a 4.5 day class, full days. And that's the hard part about that training. Now, do I love training? Yes, I do. I really enjoy helping people. But for solving problems, it's the puzzle. training isn't nearly as much of a puzzle as the actual SEO.
And you think,
But I love both.
Is that what you find so rewarding, that solving the puzzle, that great moment of, oh, I've done it? Yeah, is that what you're looking for?
I've had people come in and they say, you know, I'm in the industry, I know everybody, I can get anybody to work for me. What is it? They've all advised me what the problem is, and none of it has been able to be solved. What do you think the problem is? And I come up and half an hour later, I tell them what I think the problem is. They put it in and it solved the problem. I don't care if I gave it away for free. That's a reward for me. Solving problems. I love the puzzles. I think you can tell a real SEO is a person that isn't into it for the job. And they'll work weekends and they'll work nights. They'll track it down, they'll flip it over. They just have to determine what the solution is and fix it.
Yeah.
And that's where I place myself.
If you were to go back to the beginning of the industry, I mean, obviously, you know, you've been successful, you know, you've built a great business. But if you could go back to the beginning, is there anything that you'd do differently over the last 25 years?
Well, maybe. I have always shared all my knowledge. Somebody asks me, I'll tell them. You attend my Q&As, I'll tell you. All my webinars, and I do a webinar every other month. All my webinars are followed by 45 minutes of Q&A. Ask me anything, I give it away. You know, I don't have to worry about giving it away because in another couple of days, Google's going to change something. Right? But today I can give it away. I just love it. But if I wanted to build a very large company, I'd have to have changed my orientation entirely to be centered not on being a company of experts, but being a company of interns. That's how you get to have 100 people working for you. It is very difficult to find and hire 100 people with 15 years experience. That's like hard to do, right? And maybe I would want to be bigger and sell my company because so many people have, and realize the economic benefit of building something and 10 years in selling it and doing it again and selling it, and you know, being motivated by the money. But somehow at this stage I was more motivated by helping and teaching and doing right. And while it may or may not make sense, I've always tried to be good to my clients and good to Google all at the same time. I think if you can be in that position, you win.
So do you really think you would have done it differently? Because it seems like to me you've probably chosen the right path for you and you're very happy with that.
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to sort of start to wrap up a little bit here, couple more questions. So over the last 25 years, what have been your favorite moments in the industry for you?
Well, at one moment, I actually published the first edition of my Wiley book. That was a big moment for me because I had never done a book. And it was 746 pages. It's a big book.
Writing books are hard.
It is. The second thing was that when I really got into speaking at conferences, So at SMX, for instance, at SMX Advanced, these are advanced people that are attending. And the total audience of the conference was like 1,400 because it was constrained by the venue. And so I did my master class, and it was like 1,500 ahead, and I had 96 people in the audience. And people were saying that my master class was more valuable than the entire conference. That is a moment. When I sold my Australia office, this was years ago, it went to Omnicom. That was a big moment because it meant that not only had we achieved, but is recognized and valuable as a business. So those would probably be some of the bigger ones relative to the company.
Mm. And final question, what do you miss about those early days?
So for years, I was spending 100,000 miles on airplanes.
Wow.
I had that nice little 100,000 mile tag and all that stuff, and I could get myself a good seat. And, you know, I was in one year, I spent 150,000 miles in the air and 7,000 miles in my car. Right? So there's, and for the last 2 years, I have not even been on a plane. I haven't been to a conference. I haven't seen my colleagues and my friends I haven't seen them. And that is a very, very different thing. And I have offices in Tokyo and Singapore and Sydney and Dubai and India. And every year I would visit them. I've been to the Taj Mahal twice. I mean, you know, I've seen the Statue of David. I've been to the Colosseum. I've been to Venice. I've been to Ireland. I've been to Japan multiple times. I've been to Sydney. You know, what do I miss about it is I really miss the fact that I used to be able to just enjoy the fact that I'm running the business and go to these places and, you know, even do training there and help people and answer questions. And, you know, I haven't done that in years. And in fact, I was thinking about this week. I'd have to retrain myself on how to travel because it has been so long since I even went to an airport, right? Last week, I checked my passport just to make sure it didn't expire on me. You know? So anyhow, I miss a little bit. I miss the travel and the camaraderie of my colleagues.
Yeah. It's a really special industry, and it's one of the things that I love so much. I mean, it's changed a lot now, but even sort of 10, 12 years ago, it was very different. And it's just like a small family, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody is so friendly and helpful. I think there's negativity creeping in around the edges these days, but, you know, it's always been such a wonderful, altruistic, great camaraderie, as you say, and with some amazing people, some really, really genuinely wonderful people. And lots of super smart people as well, which is what I like. So
yes, that's great.
Yeah. Bruce, well, obviously we've been actually talking a really long time. So I'm going to wrap up here because I appreciate the time you've given me. So I'm going to say from me in a grey UK to you in a wonderful sunny California there with your backyard in the background. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for speaking to me, Bruce.
Thank you. Glad you had me. Bye, everybody.